I'm here at home in the studio and excited to share with you Jessica Todd and some of her feedback and explorations with the Plays Well with Others exhibit. It is still up until October 17th, so you've got 2 more weeks to see the show if you haven't already. We've got some nice pictures on the website. Jessica does as well on hers, and we'll be going through some more of those tonight for you if you haven't been able to take a look in person yet. Gallery hours at the Alliance for the Arts here in Fort Myers are Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 to 4, or just give us a call or stop on in. We're normally there in the office, and Saturday 9 to 1 during our green market. So come on by. And well, without further ado, sorry for the delayed start, but I'll tell you a little bit about our curator tonight, Jessica Todd. I've known her for several years, met her for the first time at the Rauschenberg Residency when I was out cleaning the floor, scraping paint off of the studio grounds and doing all the tidying up the studios for the artists to come in. Had just recently got back from out of the country. Jessica Todd has her Master's in Fine Arts in Jewelry and Metalsmithing, and she's been the residency coordinator for the Robert Rauschenberg Residency and is now relocated to Tampa St. Pete area and establishing a career as a curator there. So Jessica, pleasure to have you again tonight. We had a blast during the opening reception and having you come down and getting to spend some time with the work. So let's go ahead and get started. I think you're going to show us a little bit about the exhibit, talk about some specific works in detail, and then talk a little bit about yourself and your background, and then the nitty gritty of how the work came together and the layout of it, all those little details I always like to hear about for us art nerds that really want to get into your workings of your head. So I'll turn it over to you, Jessica, and I'll make sure I can mute my phone so I'm not. So I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's so great, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. I see such a variety of old friends and colleagues and everyone. Thank you so much. I can totally relate to being completely burned out on Zoom and screens, and so I very much appreciate the effort of coming out, as it were, to this talk, and all of your support means really just so much to me. It's very humbling to have everybody here. Thank you. And thank you to the Alliance for hosting this, to Erin, and for hosting the show, which if you have a chance to go see it in person, it's really great. And thank you to the City of Fort Myers. We got a grant for this exhibition that really supported the artists and supported me in putting it together. And thank you to the artists for participating. So first, I just want to start the same way we started with the virtual opening reception, which is to just take a moment to kind of acknowledge and take a breath. I think, you know, we're in the middle of this very scary and divisive political moment. We have the pandemic dividing us from our communities. We have, in the environment, we have wildfires and hurricanes, and dealing with human rights violations, with police brutality and detaining migrants, and I mean, the list goes on. And I think we're all kind of operating on this high level of stress and disconnection. So I just want to take a minute to just take a deep breath and kind of get our heads to where we are right now. So I'm just going to take 1 minute to everybody kind of collectively breathe. Okay, thank you. So I am going to get started. I'm going to do a screen share here, and which I actually haven't done yet somehow. And just kind of walk you through as best I can virtually through the show. So let's see, share my screen. Oh, I can pick what I'm interested in. Okay. All right, so can everybody see my screen? Thumbs up. Yes, okay. And pull up my first image here. All right, I hope everyone can see that. Everyone can see my images? Erin, yes, okay, thank you. All right, so this is me in the space. So I'm gonna just kind of start by giving everybody, I'm gonna kind of try to divide this into two parts and stay on time as best I can, but I'm gonna first kind of do a virtual tour of the show, kind of talk about the work and the inspiration behind the show, and then field some questions about that. So I think some people maybe came for the exhibition walkthrough, so I want to get that part of it done first, and then if you're ready to move on from your Zoom screen time of the day, you are more than welcome to depart. I won't be offended. And then I'll kind of move on to part two and talk a little bit more about my background and a little more of the nitty-gritty of actually kind of curating the show and putting everything together. So let's start here. So a little bit about me, just a little bit of my background. Like Erin said, I studied studio art at Kent State. I studied jewelry metals, and after that was in need of a job. So I was looking and the stars aligned, and I ended up at the Rauschenberg Residency, which I'll talk more about later. But it really led me to being interested in supporting artists and art organizations, and which later led into writing and curating as another tool for elevating artists who I believe in and filling gaps in the art world that I was seeing. So for me, curating is really a tool for achieving those goals, and that's really what I wanted to achieve with this show. And this is when you walk into the space. The show is Plays Well with Others, so I themed it around play and toys. I kind of wanted to start my foray into the curating world with something fun and lighthearted, which actually ended up going a lot deeper, which I love. But, you know, I thought, let me start here. I have a lot of ideas, but so I started with Plays Well with Others and just started with some local artists that I wanted to feature, and then kind of filling in as I went, which again, I'll go into more detail about that process later. But yeah, I will kind of walk through here. As you walk in, you'll see on the left here, I have a little area where we have the artist statements and the curatorial statement about the show. So I really wanted to try to find ways to center the artists in the show, and make sure that people knew who was making the work and why. And then you'll see down there on the left, there's a little ledge table where I have coloring book pages. I really wanted to think of ways to engage the community, and that obviously became more difficult with COVID. So one of the things we came up with was to create a coloring book. Each of the artists contributed a page, and we actually ended up producing a physical coloring book, which was originally going to be a fundraiser for the show, but we got the City of Fort Myers grant. So it ended up being a fundraiser for an organization called Southern Fried Queer Pride, which is an Atlanta-based nonprofit that supports Black, queer, and people of color queer artists in the US Southeast. So that ended up kind of being a way that we could support the local arts community, as well as having a way to interact in the exhibition that was safe and distanced. So in the back of the gallery, there's this little coloring book area where you can bring your page and grab a little bundle of take-home crayons and color. And we had some youth who have colored and contributed to the little gallery in the back, so their work kind of becomes part of the show as well. So really kind of embracing that fun and childlike side of the exhibition and the theme. But back in the gallery here, we'll kind of walk around. So we created a flow through the gallery to the left and around the back and back up. And that was to allow for social distancing and kind of keeping the flow of traffic in the same direction. When you go into the gallery, you need to wear a mask. So when you walk in, you can't miss this piece by Assaire Sambal. Assaire is an artist from Miami. He works, the first work that I saw of his was actually oil paintings, but he also creates these huge inflatable sculptures. Typically, he actually presents these in a really immersive exhibition or installation with sound, and he has food and smells and just filling in all of those 5 senses. And we originally talked about having this piece float above a bed, which is a way that he's installed it before, and then people can lay in the bed and kind of experience it. But again, we had to limit our physical interactions, so we ended up inflating the piece and having it as a sculpture in the space. But when you're in the space, you really feel the presence of it. It kind of floats and moves a little bit. It's this huge mass, and it's on the top, it's kind of bulbous, and then it kind of drapes down on the bottom. So here's a quick little time lapse of us filling it with air, which was quite an adventure. We had Assaire on the phone, kind of coaching us through from afar, inflating the sculpture. But Assaire's work is based on neuromelanin, which is a pigment found in the human brain. And it's been described as kind of the pathway from African spirituality to the material world. And so he's really talking about this transcendence by tapping into our senses and kind of coming from the spiritual world into the material world, and how those senses unite us as human beings. So it's really kind of a contemplative play of the senses. So it's kind of a little walk around of the piece. All right, so we're walking now toward the back of the front gallery, and we'll see here we get to Amelia Briggs. So Amelia is an artist in Nashville, Tennessee. She actually gave a little virtual artist talk last week, which we'll be posting, so definitely check that out. And Amelia makes these amazing playful sculptures. I actually found her work on Instagram, which is why I always encourage artists to get on Instagram. And it was in my head for a long time, and then when I came up with the theme of play, I reached out to her and asked her if she wanted to be in the show, because I thought the work would be great, and of course it is. And Amelia creates these sculptures out of fabric and faux fur, and they're just about kind of tapping into these nostalgic, ambiguous childhood forms. Like me, she was a child of the 90s, so there's a lot of reference to kind of 90s cartoons like Ren and Stimpy, and but I think also a universal kind of childhood toys. And when looking at them, what reminisces in our mind? Why do those forms feel familiar? So it's kind of about questioning where we come from, and what these references are, how cultural are they, in this little series. So then we'll kind of zoom back out here so you can see where I'm headed around the corner there. You can kind of see Assaire's sculpture there on the left to give you a sense of where we are in the back gallery. And we arrive at Alexander Martin's piece up there in the corner. So Alexander Martin, I actually found out about their work at an Alliance show a couple of years ago, and really fell in love with it. And once I had the grant from the city of Fort Myers, I reached out to Alexander, who's in Peoria, Illinois, and asked if they wanted to be in the show, and they gracefully said yes, and also created this work for the show. Alexander also gave an artist talk that we'll be posting that was really excellent, so check that out. So Alexander created this piece, and it's an interactive sculpture. So this little sculpture on the right here, you can kind of dress it up and try on different hair and costuming. I'll show you, Alexander did a video. So originally this sculpture was going to be interactive, but again, interaction became a challenge. So they created this video that kind of shows us how the sculpture is meant to be played with. And this sculpture was about, for Alexander, play being a really important part of the discovery of their identity. So in this case, it's playing with the constructs of gender. Alexander is a non-binary person. They also perform drag, so costuming and dressing up becomes a really important way of tapping into identity and performance of gender and things like that. The piece is called Make Up, which is after a like a Sailor Moon cartoon from their childhood that they loved, where that kind of comic book trope of dressing up for battle, and they really loved that transformation and the way that a costume can really change who you are and how you feel about yourself. So this video is kind of showing, how do we play? How do we let children play and explore gender without kind of imposing these constructs? And I'm just going to forward it to the end because my favorite part is the disco light at the end here. So again, the artist just really did a really great job of kind of tapping into these bigger narratives that start with play but really go beyond. So we're back in the gallery here, and on the right we have work by Chloe Lewis. Chloe, I found her work. She graduated from Florida Gulf Coast University in Fort Myers. I saw her work at a senior show, and I loved it, and it was really playful, so I reached out to Chloe about the show. And she created this work. She does a lot of zines, so it really has this strong narrative element to it. And it's kind of the story of a young girl going through life and going through obstacles and kind of figuring out that life is a journey, that everything we go through builds resiliency and informs us later in life. So she really taps into childhood with these really primary colors and basic shapes, and just really made a fun and beautiful piece. So we're zooming back out here, and you'll see we're going to focus on the pieces on this table right here in the center. This is the work of Brianna Ferrara. I'm also wearing her earrings. And Brianna, I met at a Society of North American Goldsmiths conference. I saw her work on a table, and I absolutely was captivated by it and had to meet her. So we've continued to work together on some different things since then. And Brianna created these pieces for the show that are based on a childhood toy she had that was an elephant. I know I remember these from childhood. It was an elephant that birthed tiny elephants through a Velcro pouch in its belly. And so Brianna wanted to kind of deconstruct that toy and how it spoke to her as a young girl growing up, kind of being fed this narrative of motherhood and growing up and wanting to kind of playing this narrative of you should grow up and you should want to be a parent, and it's very simple and neat. All you do is tear open some Velcro and babies come out. It's very simple, which I'm sure Erin can tell us otherwise at this point. So she kind of made these oversized purses to play with our sense of scale, to kind of bring us back to childhood and feel that sense of this oversized, overstuffed purse. They're incredibly detailed beaded pieces, and you'll see this little Velcro portion here with the pink satin where the babies go, and each piece has babies. This is the skunk, I show you the elephant, and then the snake. And so yeah, they each have their kind of miniature version. And it was about revisiting that emotion and kind of her own complicated relationship with parenthood, making that decision or not as an adult, which I'm sure many of us can relate to. Just a little more detail on that piece. All right, so we're zooming back out. We're on the other side of the back gallery here, and we're going to go up into the corner to look at the work of Labrie Rich. So I met Labrie. She was an artist at the Rauschenberg Residency where I worked, and she makes these incredible felted pieces. This is all felt. I walked a lot of people, or some people, through the gallery when I was there for the opening, and everyone's like, oh, she paints on top of felt. I'm like, no, it's all felt. So she just does these incredibly detailed replicas of kind of Americana snack foods and staples. And it's almost hard to appreciate in photos because they're so accurate, but they're really soft and tactile. She spends hours and hours replicating these items, kind of to highlight how quickly we dispose of things. You know, we grab something, eat it, throw out the container, not thinking about the production of it and the delivery of it and the trash that's left behind. And it's just this extremely brief consumerist culture that we have in the United States. And so she's kind of asking us to slow down and think about that. And I'll show you, you can kind of get a better sense in some of her photos of her work, how kind of soft and squishy they are. And then on the other side there, we have Big Frito, and it's an over, I'm going to zoom in for you here so you can really get a sense of how detailed it is. This piece is almost 2 feet high, so it's tall. It's really a big sculpture, and like I said, best appreciated in person. So I encourage anyone who can to go to the show and check it out. And then in the center there, we have 2 paintings by Whitney Hackett. So Whitney lives in Fort Myers, and actually knew her and knew she was a painter, but I actually didn't learn about this work until a little later on. She owns a great shop in Fort Myers called Quartz and Clover, and I was in her shop and looked up at the wall and saw this amazing playful piece, and I was like, who painted that? And she said me. So I was like, okay, I really want you to be in my show, and she happily, hopefully, agreed. And I'll give you a close-up of these pieces. So Whitney has this really amazing way of she has this whimsical worldview and this very innocent, like childlike perspective on the world, and just has this ability to kind of tap into our inner child. This piece reminds me of like a child's biology book. You kind of have this flora and fauna, and I think she's really asking us to look at things that we see and pay attention to them the way children do, which is to notice them for what they are instead of immediately identifying them by name and kind of casting them off in our minds, but really taking a moment to look at what's in front of us. And then in the front of the gallery here, she has 3 more paintings that I'll talk about. So these are really like opening a toy chest. She has this amazing ability to fill the canvas and includes all these items that are nostalgic and reminiscent of being a child, while also kind of talking to this American overabundance that Labrie talks about in her work as well, which is, you know, how much stuff do we have? Do we even see it anymore? So yeah, this is another piece. And this one over here. All right, so then up in the corner, we're back in the front gallery again. We have the work of Isabella Barcarisso. Isabella was an intern at the Rauschenberg Residency. That's how I met her. And I just love her work so much. She's a graphic designer in Naples now. And she did this really fun project where she made an online submission form. It was anonymous, and asked friends, family, contacts, whoever, to go on there and submit the describe the strangest imaginary game that they played as a child. And based on those submissions, she created kind of her own imagination of what that game looked like. So, for example, this one, the title and the accompanying story is "Turn the whole upstairs part of the house into a bedsheet fort kingdom, and my sister and I were bad witches and had pet dragons." And this one is, "When I was a kid, I used to play imaginary tea party. When my siblings started going to school, they became my imaginary friends, imaginary versions of my siblings, so I wouldn't be alone." So they're just really sweet and kind of speak to this innocence of childhood and the ability of children to kind of think outside the box and imagine this future for themselves. And I talked to Izzy before the show, and she was kind of deciding on the work that she wanted to do. And in the meantime, all of this COVID stuff was coming out, and these social justice movements. And she was like, I don't know if I could make fun, sweet work about play and toys right now. And I got that, and we kind of talked through it, and it was like, you know what, this is a way of tapping into something a lot deeper than just fun and toys, which is kind of appealing to our humanity. You know, what do we imagine the world to be as children? And don't we all have the right to imagine a future for ourselves, and sort of asking people to do that for each other? Can we accommodate an open future and an open vision for that amongst our communities? So it really ended up kind of taking on a different meaning, deeper, but is also really just a fun and playful project. And then she animated the pieces as well. So when you look at the gallery view, you'll see there's also a screen where the pieces kind of come to life. All right, so we are back at the beginning, and I'm running a little behind the schedule I wanted to adhere to, but we're still good. We can still make it. So I just wanted to kind of pause quickly here and ask if there were, see if we can answer maybe one or two questions that are based kind of on the show itself and the concept before I move on to talking about my own background and kind of the process of curating the show. So I just welcome you to unmute yourself and start talking if you have any questions. Anyone? Okay. All right. Aaron, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, I saw your face moving.
Oh, I have a question. I love how you really translated and encapsulated Izzy's work and sort of the show and as a whole, you know, as these concepts that we, you know, relate to through childhood and through coping mechanisms and things like that children do innately in order for them to understand the world and comprehend it. Are there any speaking like between some of the pieces, just curious, like any surprises that you found once the work was in the space, that they interacted with different way, anything that caught you off guard? Just curious. So, you know, I was there installing with you and putting it together, and I just know it's always different once you get it in there. Was there anything that caught you by surprise?
Yeah, you mean as far as installation or like interaction between pieces, or?
Yeah, I guess the interaction between the pieces. I mean, I know you see them, you know, in images, but once they were in the space or any way that, I mean, you conceptualized a lot of that ahead of time, you know, with some of your drawings and renderings. It seemed it was pretty well thought out and executed. Just curious if there was anything that maybe you didn't expect to happen.
I mean, I think just seeing everything in full color was really exciting. You know, some of the work I had seen in person before, but some of it I hadn't. So it was really exciting to, you know, have that Christmas morning moment of opening the packages and seeing everything in person. Brianna, you know, I'd seen like teasers of her work, but like me, she works to the last moment. So I had like no idea what to expect when we opened the box. So that was this like really awesome, incredible moment of, oh my God, this is amazing. And you know, Labrie, I had seen her work in person before, but Big Frito was a new piece, and that was a really exciting moment of opening Big Frito. And then I think we posted a picture of Big Frito next to Amelia's pieces because we just had them laid out on a table next to each other. And they all happened to be like a very similar scale. So it was like the work started playing with each other in the gallery. And then I think the last thing we did was inflate Assaire's piece, which was such a dramatic moment of having that kind of fill up the center of that front gallery, and then seeing how when you saw past it, you saw these like connecting colors and images. And so yeah, I think that was just really exciting to see some of the forms kind of speak to each other in ways that I hadn't thought about or anticipated.
Great, thanks. Yeah.
All right, so in the interest of time, I'm going to charge ahead, and then hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end as well. So I'm going to head back to my screen share here. All right, let me do this. Come on. How do I make Zoom smaller? Okay. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, actually. Okay, so we have the show. All right, so a little about me. This is me in grad school at Kent State, where I did my MFA in jewelry metals. So that's me at my jewelry bench. And by the time I graduated in 2014, I wanted to be a studio artist, maybe teach, but I was dirt poor and needed to earn some income. So I thought, okay, well, I'll get a job and kind of keep my studio practice up and see where it goes from there. And somehow, you know, I was applying for jobs in Florida, and I just happened to see this listing for the Rauschenberg Residency and applied. This is the main studio at Rauschenberg. And I still amazed that out of grad school, this was my first job. But I was hired as the residency coordinator, later became the residency manager. And it just kind of started as like, oh, this is a really cool day job for me. You know, who could ask for a better way to make money and have my studio practice on the side? But as time went on, it really became more than that. And this is an image of me at my desk. There's the Rauschenberg sculpture behind me, and that's actually Anne Hamilton's dog on the floor in front of me. So that's how I spent most of my time, was at my computer. You know, it wasn't always a fancy job. It was a lot of admin and nitty gritty stuff, which I happen to be good at. I never connected that with my studio practice, but it actually, I realized over time, like, oh, this is a skill that can really help an arts organization that then helps artists, and that's something I'm really passionate about. And there's a shot with some of the resident artists, and Ann Brady, who's here, is our director and my boss. And yeah, over time, after meeting all these amazing people, I met over 350 artists during my time there, some of whom are on this call. Thank you for coming. And I just met the most amazing people from around the country and around the world, and they were making work that was really tapping into the subjects that I wanted to talk about, but didn't really feel like I could get to in my work. And I finally was like, I feel way more fulfilled supporting these artists than I ever have in my studio work. So that was kind of this huge shift. And then seeing the ways that, you know, my ability to make a spreadsheet, which feels like a really unsexy skill to have, but compared to being an artist. But I realized, like, this is a part of my practice, and this is a part of what helps me to support artists. And so that really led me into writing and curating, and seeing writing and curating as a way to elevate artists and a way to fill in gaps in the art world. In my case, a lot of times contemporary craft, seeing those gaps, being frustrated by them, and realizing, well, if I want someone to make a show with these kinds of artists or write an article, then who better to do it than me? So I really kind of challenged myself to take that on. And the writing was easy. The curating a show was a little bigger and scarier. But this is how I started. I spoke to friends who did curating. I spoke to Erin, who'd done a lot of shows, and came up with an exhibition proposal. And kind of started from a place of having these guiding principles, I would say, to the show. What were the most important things to me that came really before the concept, which was to have diversity of all kinds, age, background, career level, training, or academics, or self-trained, without tokenizing anybody. I didn't want to have diversity and then ask someone to make a certain kind of work. I really wanted to leave that up to the artists. I really wanted to represent local artists, and especially local artists who were underrepresented in the local art scene. I wanted to integrate crafts media with painting and sculpture, because there are a lot of these hierarchies that I think we just need to do away with. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to be transparent as a curator, laying out all these principles to the artists from the very beginning. I wanted to center the artists and make sure that this was helping them in some way and helping their career and really highlighting them as people. I wanted to engage and support the community, which became a little more of a challenge with COVID, but finding ways to do that. And I wanted to pay the artists. So paying for shipping in both ways, and then paying them a stipend was really important to me, because a lot of people don't even know, but artists are often paying to enter calls for entry, as well as paying for their own shipping. Unless they make a sale, they're really very rarely making money on a show. So I wanted to do something to kind of represent that I support paying artists, even though it wasn't as much as I think they deserve. But so yeah, this is my kind of proposal. Then I applied, I needed money, and I applied for a City of Fort Myers Arts and Culture grant. This is my grant application. And as I go through this, if there are studio artists out there who are interested in curating, I'm certainly not an expert, but I did put myself through this process, so I'm more than happy to share any of these things with you. Just email me. So getting the grant allowed me to pay for all of those things, as well as the displays and a lot of the installation stuff. Going forward, I created like an artist curator agreement, which was kind of somewhat of a contract between me and the artist, what I expected from them and what they could expect from me. I'm just showing you all of my documents so you see my process here. I made an exhibition checklist, so sending ask emails to the artists, which was a really cool process. I knew some of the people and I knew they would say yes, but then there were others who I literally had never spoken to, and I was so excited that they trusted me as a curator, calling myself a curator for the first time. And then kind of going through the different steps of what I needed from everybody. That's the admin side of me. And then creating a budget and tracking how much money I was spending. Keep a personal budget, and it's always amazing how things add up. So the budget has been a really big learning experience for me. And then figuring out the installation of the show. Once I'd given the exhibition proposal to Aaron, and luckily the Alliance was really great about getting us in there in a relatively quick turnaround compared to most exhibitions. And then I was working with the gallery map from afar, especially during COVID. I couldn't really go into the space. I had invited the artists, and some of them had work that was already made, but others were making work. So I didn't know exactly what to expect. And once I had dimensions for all the work, I created this kind of render of the gallery in Rhinoceros 3D, which is a 3D modeling program. Certainly not necessary. You could draw it on a piece of paper if this isn't your bag, but I happen to have these skills from jewelry making, and it really helped me visualize the space. I had a lot of really big work like Assaire, and Whitney's paintings are really big. And then I had some really small work like Labree's and Alexander's that I needed to figure out how to visually balance in the space. So that's when I came up with the idea for these displays, and then also painting on the wall, those kind of big amorphous blobs behind some of the work, kind of helped ground it in the space. And this allowed me to create a render of the gallery beforehand, which, I mean, I have to say I'm pretty proud of myself on this render. But this arrow is giving you a sense of how the path, the flow went through the gallery. It was important to the Alliance that we keep a flow where everybody's going in the same direction. So that was showing that, and this was my proposal to Aaron as well, so that he knew what was coming, and just kind of a view of what was expected. And some things changed, but it really helped me understand the scale of the work in the space and how to balance really big things and really small things, which was important to me too. Not that all of the artists who work in crafts media work small, but a lot of times artists who work in crafts media work small. So it was a really important learning experience of a tool that I could do to balance those things in future exhibitions. And then what it also allowed me to do is, if you look in that top view, which is in the left top corner there, you'll see some lines of, I was able to take the displays, the curved lines from the displays, and move them over to the size of wood that I was going to buy, the size of the plywood, so that I could plot out the installation once I had the wood, plot out the displays. So then I was able to print those, make measure that everything was to scale. So I was able to take measurements, print those, and then record that onto plywood and cut everything out to scale so that I knew what I was getting once it was in the gallery. So that's me. I fabricated all the displays, painted all the displays in the backyard. And that, is an example of one of the finished results. I also had to do PR, so I did all of the creating all of the PR with Instagram and through the Alliance and Facebook, as well as my website, printing. So I'll show you quick. Just on my website, I did a page that I would keep up with each of the things going on. So we have registration for the events. You can watch the virtual opening reception, which I invite anybody to do if you want. That's fun because I walk through the space. And then about the artists, all of their artist statements are here. My curatorial statement. You can order a coloring book that the proceeds will go to Southern Fried Queer Pride. And just, yeah, I did this little video. We'll see if it'll play. So yeah, it was, that's been an ongoing thing, and I'm updating content there. Then we printed the coloring book. I also printed a pamphlet that you can get at the gallery with my curatorial statement and some images of the work and information about the artists, as well as composing these artist statement pieces that were printed in the gallery you saw in the beginning. And doing the wall vinyl as well. And then installation, I will play this video that we took on, I think it was day 2 of installation. I think we spent three pretty long days installing the show, and yeah, inflating the big sculpture and hanging the work, and Erin was amazing. We also had a volunteer come. And putting everything in the space and having that to scale model was so helpful. I don't know how I would have pictured everything in the space otherwise, but everything really came together, and like we spoke about earlier, and Erin asked that question, there's also still a lot of surprises with how things interact and come together. So yeah, it was a learning experience, and really it came down to me saying, I want to learn how to curate and use it as this tool for these things that I believe in. And so what better way to learn how to curate than to just curate a show? And so I kind of did it by the seat of my pants, and we had some obstacles along the way, but it turned out really good. And like I said, I'm more than happy to share with anyone who's kind of interested in learning more about that. Let me try to pull up my screen here so I can see everyone's faces. Yeah, I'm more than happy to share any of those resources with anybody. And yeah, I'll open it up for final questions here.
I have a question, Jessica. So first of all, I got to walk through the exhibition with Jessica and her parents, which was great. And if I had made all of the pieces that she made, I would have had a sign on there, I made these. because they were great. And I was asked casually, oh, did you make these? Oh yeah. And they're fabulous and they look great in the space. And I think actually the video does it justice. My question is a curator artist agreement standard? Or is that something that did you have a template or did you create it? And if so, what was the impetus for that?
Yeah, well, I don't know that it's standard. It was kind of something I came up with because the Alliance had a contract that was their standard contract for exhibitions, but usually it's between them and the actual artist who's showing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of this intermediary, and it didn't cover some of the stuff that I felt like needed to be communicated and agreed upon. So, you know, like their contract states like we don't provide shipping, and I was. So rather than trying to fit it into their template and kind of complicate things, the artist did sign a contract with the Alliance, but I wanted to, and I called it an agreement because it wasn't really a contract, but just kind of laying out everything they should expect from me,
Mm-hmm.
which could have also been, you know, an orientation to the exhibition, but I called it an agreement because I felt like there were things that I needed from them, like I need you to send me images by this time, and I need you to ship your work by this time, and you understand how much I'm covering for shipping, and laying out, like, if I'm able to get a grant, you know, again, back to the transparency thing of exactly what order I was going to pay for things, because I told people I would like to provide a stipend for you, but I don't know if I'm going to have the funding for that. So being really clear, like, okay, the first thing I'm going to pay for with money, I promise you I will pay for up to $300 round trip shipping. After that, I'm going to have some funds set aside for community programming. After that, displays. If after that there's funding still, then you will get a stipend, but it's not guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of like making sure I was really clear.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like a good idea, just so that because there is this relationship between the curator and the artist that's different between the artist and the gallery. And that transparency, I mean, it sounds like the kinds of things you did when we worked together, where you were thinking about like, what does the artist need in this situation, and just being as totally transparent and communicating that information, right? If you could or couldn't. So anyway, yeah, I wasn't familiar with it, but I don't really know. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as we learned many times, the key to like keeping everybody satisfied is communication more than anything. It's not, did you provide a $300 stipend or no stipend? It's letting people know ahead of time what to expect. So that was totally a contribution from my admin experience at Rauschenberg.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
And I also, you know, I took on more of an organizer role than probably most curators would typically do. I, you know, took some of Aaron's duties, he was happy to do them, but I was like, I'm going to do this because for me, it was like, I want to show what I can do also, you know, for my future. And so it was like, you know, making the gallery render and doing all the PR and like, how can I kind of bolster this experience to be more than just, I threw a bunch of artists together. So.
Do you have plans for another show? Are you working on something else?
Not actively. I'm finishing up an article that's about body-based bead artists, or body-based art, artists who make body-based work using beads for Metalsmith magazine. So that's been my kind of second focus after this. Brianna will actually be in that article. And after that, yeah, I don't know, COVID threw things off. I think every gallery and is kind of in a whirlwind right now, so it's hard to think about and plan these things. But I did speak. Alexander Martin, who's in the show, runs a space in Peoria, and they invited me to do something. So hopefully I'll get the ball rolling now that, I don't know, people are starting to figure out how to make exhibitions work again.
Well, good. Yes, thanks.
Anyone else have any questions?
I was just going to say, I appreciate that you're, hi, how are you doing, Jessica? It's nice to see you. Hi, Anne. It's great to see you too. I just want to say how much I appreciate that you're thinking about the artist's expenses, because oftentimes I will spend $500 to, you know, do a submission, ship the work, make the work, and it will just sit, you know, and it will be in an opening, and there will be no press or no pictures. It will just be a line on my resume, which is great, but you hope for something more, and it's a lot of money. So, you know, thank you for that. I mean, it's great that you're thinking about that. As you know, with the Rauschenberg Residency, you really cared about what the needs of the artists, and it's wonderful that you're taking that with you, and I'm grateful.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you for coming. It's so good to see you. So Tamara was an artist at the Rauschenberg Residency.
Great experience.
Years
Amazing.
ago. Oh my God. But yeah.
And by the way, the show is beautiful. It's really so well thought out. I love the pieces that you made just for display. I mean, it just, everything about it is so cohesive and fun.
Thank you. Yeah, it was fun to work with all these artists. I mean, I totally different experience than making your own work in the studio, and I loved it so much, and everyone was so gracious with me and getting through the changes of COVID. And I think just me having a studio art background, like, I totally get that expenses issue. So each of the artists got $100 stipend, which isn't a lot. Like you said, for materials, you're often paying so much more than that. But I wanted to try to give them something, almost, if anything, like a symbolic, like,
yeah, it makes a difference.
Paying you, and paying their shipping, so, you know, at least they're not losing money on just the process of getting it to and from the exhibition. And yeah, and along the way, trying to find ways of, like, featuring them on my social media and getting video and keeping that content on my website in, like, a permanent place, so they have something to go back to. Like, when I did the PR images, I made everybody their own little square that they could use, because I used to hate being in group shows and having to use, like, someone else's artwork in my, so yeah, it was, it's an ongoing thing, and I just hope, you know, as I go forward and hopefully get more access to resources, that I can support artists more and just try to center that in whatever role I'm in.
Hey, Jessica.
Hey, Sarah.
Okay, finally pronounced my name right. You've been calling me asshole for a while. Asshole. Assaire. But, you know, Jessica, I'm so honored to have been invited to this show, and especially it's your first show. Look, I've worked for a museum, one of the best museums in South Florida. I don't know if you could guess, for a lot of years. The Perez Art Museum. So I know good quality exhibitions when I see it. And I've been in many, many, many shows around the nation. People invite me to shows and have ideas, and they put up shows. I've never seen anything so cohesive as yours.
Oh.
And the thought even some of your artistry is in there too, like the touch of the background, the circles, the shape, the flat chromatic shapes you put, and how you arrange it. Everything makes sense, and you had a vision, and I don't see that often. And I've been in a lot of shows, and there was somebody who mentioned like they spend so much money in shows. Who was that? Was that you? Who was that?
Camera.
Who?
Camera Staples. She's
Oh, okay. And just like one of my strategies for that, if a show charges, I just say no. I refuse. It's I refuse to pay to show my work, or pay for, or for instance, a fee. I just don't think it makes sense. It never makes sense to me. I'm like, look, you want to show my work. Why are you charging me to show it? It doesn't make sense to me. So I just don't show.
Yeah. And I think a lot of, young artists, and I experienced this in grad school, is in the beginning of your career, you're just so hungry for those opportunities, and how do you get your work out there? And so you end up doing it as an investment in yourself, but I just remember I would get so frustrated. I'm like, this makes no sense.
No sense, yeah.
I'm paying you to show my work to enhance the clout of your gallery, or make this beautiful show, or it's my work.
Exactly. It made no sense for me. I mean, I tell my friends, like, if you have to pay, it doesn't make sense. They should pay to show your work. Where's the support? You want this, right? So pay to have it. So thanks again. I'm glad I said yes to exhibiting in the show. I think I missed some of the presentation you did prior. But this is good that this is about how you put this together. It's a lot of work.
That's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. Congratulations. I mean, it's paid.
You out there. I reached out to you out of the blue, so I was super impressed. That I was like, oh, this guy has like a major career happening.
Well, you didn't ask me to pay for anything. That was I would say, no.
I thought that might help. Yeah.
No thanks. But thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for...
Thank you. I just wish I could walk into the space, go see the show, and like no mask, and just natural and enjoy. It's coming. Those days are coming back. Thank you again, Jessica and Aaron. Thank you. And all the artists to be next to you. Thank you. Awesome show. Congrats.
All right, well, we're at almost 7:10 here, so I don't want to keep everyone, but yeah, I'll please send me any messages, like I said, if you're interested in any of those resources or have any other questions, and I'll keep posting content on my website and social media. The show ends October 17th, and then we're actually doing kind of a little mini offshoot of the show at the Cape Coral Art Center in Cape Coral, which is right next to Fort Myers, for those of you who aren't in the area. And it will be the work of the artists who have kind of local roots, which is Whitney Hackett, Chloe Lewis, and Isabella Barcarisso. So that'll be the part 2, and that'll be up October 19th to November 19th. So thank you, everyone, so much for coming. Aaron, I'll let you wrap it up.
Oh, no, thank you very much. It was an excellent feature conversation and window into all the hard work that put this show together. And I just want to, again, close and thank you on behalf of the Alliance, on behalf of Fort Myers, and, next going over the bridge to Cape Coral, for bringing these artists here, enriching our community, sharing these beautiful voices with everyone here. It's a lot of great feedback from the gallery, from our community. It's just a really great testament to your multidisciplinary approach to curating, from being an engineer and those software translations into how you got all that plywood out to save your budget, and from the web designing, publishing, PR. You know, we worked a lot of this stuff together and got the trajectory. You know, I really let you have at it, and we just, you know, lift you up as a curator and give you the space. You know, I said, hey, we've got walls for you. Let's see what we can do. And you did an amazing job. And, you know, from your ethical standards to integrity and the concepts with these artists. And I think you definitely developed some long-lasting partnerships, you know, with these artists that trust you as a curator with their work and as an individual. So congratulations on that. It's something to be proud of. So, but yes, if you're around, contact me at the Alliance for the Arts and come on by, take another look, and stay in touch. And yeah, come see the show.